Most directors think the words limited company means unlimited protection. Listen, that's not true. Limited liability is a shield, but if you misuse it, that shield can shatter. And in 2026, the authorities like HMRC have more power than ever to pursue directors like you personally. Now, if you don't understand what makes you personally liable, you could lose everything. But if you know the rules, you can protect yourself. Now, I had an inquiry, and they thought liquidation wiped everything clean, okay? And I said to him, listen, your problem here, mate, is you have an overdrawn director's loan account. You owe the company £42,000, and on paper, you're quite wealthy. So sadly, you're not going to be able to write that off. He says, Chris, I'm speaking to another firm. They're going to do it for 3,000 quid. I'm not interested. Thanks for your information. Obviously, 3 months later, they're coming at him for £42,000. Now, the problem with this director is he did not understand where he was going to be made personally liable. So I'm going to help you today. I'm going to help you understand it. And I'm going to talk to you about how limited liability really works. So let's peel it back a little bit. When you run a limited company, the company is a separate legal entity, right? So we've got Chris Worden Limited here, and we've got Chris Worden, who's the director of Chris Worden Limited. Chris Worden Limited owns any assets in the company. It owns the table, it owns the lights, it owns the camera. It also owns the debts. Chris Worden is an officer who is there to manage this limited company. And that's the core protection. Now, unless you break the rules, your conduct is called into question, or you blur the lines between business and personal finances, most people are okay. You are not your limited company. But there are a lot of scenarios where you can become personally liable. And that's what I want to go through right now. First one, personally guaranteed debts. You might have signed a bank loan. You might have signed a credit card. You might have suppliers that you've personally guaranteed to pay. You might have personally guaranteed the lease of the premises that your business are in. Now, all of these things, if you've signed the PGs and your company goes into liquidation, you are on the hook for those debts. These debts survive liquidation, okay? Now, in 2026, lenders who give you personal guarantees are really diligent, okay? These PGs are easier to enforce than perhaps you signed one from, 15 years ago. If your name's on it, the debt's yours. And if the company fails, that debt is going to follow you around. Now, the next thing that causes directors huge amount of problems is an overdrawn director's loan account. And it's basically when you've taken more money out of the company than you've put in. And that is a personal debt. The insolvency practitioner, his job is to get that money from you personally. It is, for me, the number one reason directors face personal claims after liquidation. And it's so misunderstood. Another reason why you're going to be made personally liable is wrongful trading. If you keep trading after you know the company is insolvent, you can be held personally liable for new losses. Now, let me just give you an idea of what insolvency means, right? There's three tests. Can I pay my debts when they fall due? Are my liabilities more than my assets? And is someone taking legal action against my company like a CCJ? If you fail any of those tests, the business is insolvent. Now, at that point, you should really be getting advice, okay? But if you knowingly continue to trade, racking up more HMRC debt, building up supplier debt, taking customer deposits when you know you're never going to be able to finish the job, that's going to be an area that you're going to be made personally liable for. So trading on, it's like, it's not noble, it's bloody risky. Now, another area where people are getting made personally liable is bounce back loans at the moment. Especially if you've done things with the bounce back loans that you shouldn't. So I know this is going out in 2026. Bounce back loans were back in 2020. But if you took a bounce back loan when you shouldn't have done, like you weren't trading, or you took more than one bounce back loan for a company, or you took a bounce back loan and sent it to your mum or sent it to your brother or withdrew it in cash, and then you go into liquidation, or even if you don't go into liquidation and you get forced into liquidation, you could be made personally liable for that bounce back loan. It's happening all the time. There's a thing called a preference payment. So like once you become insolvent, you've got to be really careful who you pay. If you pay one creditor, like your family or a personally guaranteed debt, over another, that is a preference payment. So you have to be really careful once you become insolvent that you don't favour certain creditors over other ones. Because what can happen is once the insolvency practitioner gets appointed, they'll review your transactions and they'll go, wait there, you've paid that company over everybody else. I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to come and make you personally liable for it. There's another thing called a transaction undervalue. So if you are doing a pre-pack, I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on, but essentially a pre-pack is where you're insolvent, you're starting a new company, and you're going to move the assets from your insolvent company to the new company. Listen, you can do that as long as you do it legally and the new company pays a fair market value for those assets. So let's say it's a vehicle or a car, it's dead easy to find out. Go on the internet, WeBuyAnyCar, get a valuation and make sure the new company pays the old company that value. But if you've got plant, machinery, websites, phone numbers, goodwill, that type of thing, you probably want to get an independent valuation and let an agent tell you how much you should be buying this business back for. You've got to be really careful. Like in insolvency, fairness isn't optional, it's law. You know, another thing that we're starting to see more now is from the HMRC. And they're called personal liability notices. And that's where HMRC can make you personally liable for debts like VAT or PAYE if they believe you've deliberately increased these debts. I mean, if you ignore HMRC long enough, they can make the debt yours. Now, there's areas where you're not personally liable, okay? Listen, if you've acted responsibly and you've sought advice as soon as you've understood that you're insolvent and you've taken the advice of the person who you've spoken to, you should be okay. If you've not signed personal guarantees, you're okay. You know, when it comes to directors' loan accounts, it's understanding yours. You know, what I want to sort of talk about now is, you know, how you could potentially protect yourself from all of these issues. So obviously, listen, get advice early. Once you spot the cash flows drying up, you need to speak to somebody. Listen, if you've liked what I've said so far, go to the comment section, click on that link. You can speak to one of my team today. Free advice, no obligation, no strings attached, with the #1 rated on Trustpilot, and we'll help you understand your options. Now, another way you can protect yourself is not to continually recklessly go trading on. And what I mean by that is, right, I'm not the guy who's going to ring you and say you're insolvent, therefore stop trading immediately. That's not always the best option. Maybe continuing to trade will bring more money into the pot for creditors. I had an example this week. Another firm said you need to stop trading immediately. But if he'd have stopped trading immediately, he'd have not been able to complete the work in progress. Basically, his work in progress was going to cost him 10 grand to complete, and it was going to bring 40 grand in. So that guy, he needed to complete that work in progress to bring basically a net return of 30,000 in for creditors. But if you don't think that you can continue, don't take any new orders. You know, don't take any on any more debts. Don't be racking up supplier debts mindlessly. And check your personal guarantees. Like, find out what's legally yours to repay. And you'll be able to find that out. You know, certain lenders, you've definitely signed a personal guarantee. Funding Circle, IWOP, Capital on tap. You know, certain suppliers you'll have signed a personal guarantee, Travis Perkins, MKM, but you can go through your age creditors and go, right, well, where have I signed a PG, and total that up. Now, I think it's important that you have a plan of how you're going to deal with those personal guarantees if you go into a liquidation, because they're all going to crystallise on you. Once you go into liquidation or administration, they're all going to come to you and go, right, you owe us this money, we want the money back. Now that puts the fear of God into a lot of directors. But the reality is that's just their process. And most personally guaranteed debts will hear your proposals. And in some cases, you're able to negotiate with them and actually pay them less than what you actually owe them. But in a lot of cases, you just need to restructure the loan. So it depends on what you're doing next. You know, are you pre-packing your business? And what I mean by that is, are you starting a new company, moving the business over and trading again? Therefore, you'll hopefully be profitable and you'll have some spare, you'll be able to pay these PGs off over a period of time. So what you can do with personal guarantees is speak to the lenders. I can introduce you to someone who's really good. I've done a podcast with him called Gary Whitehead, and he helps people with PGs day in, day out. The lenders want to hear your proposals. Most of them don't want to take legal action against you. They don't want to go down the bankruptcy route because it's very, very expensive. But you've got to have a plan how you're going to deal with it. And that'll help you mentally, because a lot of people will be watching this going, I've got personally guaranteed debts, I'm going to end up made homeless. That doesn't happen in most cases, okay? You can restructure those loans. Sometimes you restructure those loans and for the first few months, you can pay very little because your new business is just getting off the ground. And as your business gets off the ground, you can step up your payments to the personally guaranteed creditors. Another thing, listen, with overdrawn loan accounts, this is mega important. I want you to listen in here. Every director has a director's loan account. Where it becomes a problem is if it's overdrawn, okay? If it's overdrawn, you owe the company money, and an insolvency practitioner is duty bound to try and get that money off you. Now, how you can protect yourself is, first of all, understand your director's loan account. Now, sadly, if you don't use any management software, this is a big... If you don't have QuickBooks, Sage, Xero or Free Agent that's up to date, this is harder to solve for you because you're going off your last set of accounts. There was a snapshot of your business at some day in the past. I suppose it's a starting point, but if you go into your last set of accounts and you go into the assets section or the debtors section or the director's advances section, it will tell you whether you've got an overdrawn loan account or not, but it doesn't tell you the full picture because your accounts were a snapshot of your business a long time ago. And if you continue to take money out of that business that's not through the payroll, not through salary, you might call it as a dividend. It's only a dividend if your accountant declares a profit at the end of the year. The chances are your director's loan account has gone up since those last set of accounts. Now, if you're organised and you watch me, and dare I say, you listen to what I'm saying to people, you've probably got up-to-date management software. So you pull a trial balance off that, and in your trial balance, it will show where your director's loan account is. And the first thing is go, is that correct? Are there any expenses that you've not put through, or the things that your accountant's categorised wrong? We'll help you understand that. But once you've got a final picture on your director's loan account, you've got to look at what your personal asset position is. Now, if you are in rented accommodation with very little disposable income, it's very hard for an insolvency practitioner to recover anything from you. They're certainly not going to start legal action spending money if there's no hope of a return. And in them scenarios, you can almost make, any type of reasonable offer and an IP will accept it. Because what's the other outcome? They'll get nothing. In a lot of cases, you'll be able to write it off if you've got no assets, if you've got no disposable income. But the other end of the scale, let's say you've got a house with a lot of equity in, with very little mortgage, you're at risk. Because if you've got an overdrawn loan account and you've got tons of equity, well, your creditors will say, well, make this person bankrupt because they can afford to pay the money back. And this is where you can be on a real sticky wicket. And most people in the middle, they've got a house, they might have some savings, they've got some equity in the house, but there's a mortgage. The key thing with a director's loan account is you want somebody to be guiding you on what a settlement might look like. Because an insolvency practitioner has the ability to offer you a settlement if it's in the best interest of creditors. And what I mean by that is, if you don't do anything, and let's say you've got a lot of equity, an insolvency practitioner, they're really meant to make you bankrupt. But bankruptcy is very expensive. People don't understand that. There's like legal costs, trustee and bankruptcy cost, which is someone who'll take 15% of realisations. There are petitioning fees. There are official receivers fees. It could cost £50,000 to £100,000 to make someone bankrupt who has a lot of equity. And insolvency practitioners don't really like the risk of bankruptcy, because making someone bankrupt and essentially forcing them to sell the house could take years, could take 3 years. And a director's situation could have changed drastically in those 3 years. They could have remortgaged the house to the hilt and spent the money. They could move somewhere. They don't like the risk associated with bankruptcy. And that's why in many cases you will be able to get a settlement done on a director's loan account. And this is something we specialise in. We'll help you understand and we'll do it quickly. So if you've got a problem with your director's loan account, pick the phone up to us. Click on that link below and we'll call you today. Now, want to sort of loop back. Will you be made personally liable for company debts? Yep. PGs. Yes, if you've misused company phones. Yes, if you've misused the bounce back loan. Yes, if you've got an overdrawn loan account. But you won't be made personally liable if you've acted responsibly. Seeking advice early helps, and following the correct process. Limited liability protects some directors and not others. Now, if you're a UK director and you are worried about being personally liable, I want you to contact me today. We will review your situation free. We'll explain your risks in plain English and we'll help you understand what your options are. Now, if you found this video useful, I want you to go over there. I've got another video that tells you everything about overdrawn loan accounts. We're going to dig into how you can understand your position. We're going to talk about settlements, potentially what could you settle an overdrawn director's loan account. This is where your house is on the line, guys and girls. Go over there, it's an important video to watch. Chris Worden, Director First.